is Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. Good morning once again to you. We are the Pink Twins today.
Exactly.
Feeling summery, enjoying it. And of
Going
course,
bright.
when it's lovely and summery and nice, lovely smooth seas, great day for a boat ride. You showed me a lovely picture, a little boat ride you did with your mates, a little bit of a little jaunt the other day. Could have got a dinghy, would have been cheaper, 1,500 quid, apparently. Say what you like about capitalism.
My mate
Competition
works.
owns
the boat.
Oh, so it didn't cost you a thing. Well played.
Yeah.
You should go and just start ferrying migrants. You can make a lovely living. There's loads of money to be had. Anyway, for some reason, best beknownst to himself, Keir Starmer is under the illusion that a deal he's going to do today, we believe, with Emmanuel Macron, the French president, who's been here on it's the third day of his visit to the UK. Red carpet rolled out, best cutlery cleaned at Windsor Castle, all bonhomie and lovely, speech in Parliament, everything. Keir Starmer's under the illusion that he's going to do a deal which is going to stop the boat, smash the gangs. Not sure how it does that, but it's going to be a one-in, one-out deal. Why we'd want one in return for the one out is beyond me, but apparently that's the plan. But we're looking at a trial being set up, which would mean just 50 Channel migrants being returned to France, deported to France. I'm going to go, yeah, good luck with that, because we'll see what the human rights lawyers make of that. That would be for the trial. It would be the equivalent of just 1 in 17 of those actually arriving in a normal week these days. We're told, OK, it could expand, and that this would deter people from actually making the journey. Your face is a picture, by the way, at this point. Do you think it's going to work, Philip?
No.
Moving on.
I had to recheck my maths. I was never very good at maths, but I went
better
through
at it than Starmer is.
And 50 in, so we send 50 back to France, and they send us 50 back again.
I'll get the calculator on my phone out. Hold on a mo. No, it doesn't.
So that means that we've got the same number that had come in beforehand. So we're getting 1,250-ish a week. So we're still growing by that number, and this is a good deal. Oh, and by the way, that then means that to find those other 50, we have to find someone proving they've got relatives in the UK, and therefore processing them. And their identity documents will have to magically just appear for all that to happen. Well, why don't we just process them and refuse them in Calais, and everyone gets processed in Calais? If they don't get processed there, they don't get in. And we then don't have people crossing the channel.
But except we still would, because people who wouldn't get through on that system would still have an urge to go the boat. The theory behind this, I get why they think this might work. They're wrong, but I get it. Okay, so you've got this idea again. Everyone, same for the Rwanda scheme, same for this scheme. This idea that if you come over here, but you've got a good chance of basically not being able to stay here, it's not worth your while to pay. It used to be £5,000, now it's about £1,500 to come over on the boats. They're basing that on the Australia scheme, where basically you never set foot on Australian soil, end of, nothing to discuss, and you will never do so. The reason why that worked is because the reason why that worked was because it literally meant that you never set foot on Australian soil, and they didn't, and the boat stopped. It took a couple of months, that was it, and the boat stopped, end of, nothing to discuss. A longer bit of sea and ocean to cover, fair enough. The reason why I thought Rwanda wouldn't work, because they were never going to deport the 120,000 backlog to Rwanda. It wasn't going to happen, and at the end of the day, it's about the odds. People who are going to be travelling from, Eritrea or Afghanistan or any other basket case country, war-torn or economic migrants, the amount of money and the risks you take physically to actually get to Libya, to then get the boat across, and then get across all the borders in Europe to get to Calais and paying the people smugglers. The point of that, at that point, you're not, and the risk of crossing the biggest shipping lane and busiest shipping lane in the world, you're not then going to suddenly say, oh, but I've got a 1 in 17 chance of being sent back. It's not worth my while. I'll head back to my village in Eritrea. That's not going to actually put people off. But I'm sure Downing Street would say, but this is just a trial. It's going to be much bigger scale. But this is the problem. We're saying, well, we're going to take, as you say, other people, the asylum seekers who are eligible. I don't understand why someone who is already in a safe country like France feels the need desperately to leave France. They're already not our problem. If Europe want to have open borders, that's up to them, not my problem, thank you, as a British taxpayer. And I don't see why, because they've got an uncle living in Leicester or a second cousin in Leicester, that they should be able to come over. And by the way, they won't come over on their own. They'll be bringing their husband or wife, their 4 kids, grandma, grandpa, dad, brother, sister, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, uncle, second cousin once removed. We will have 15 people for every one that we deport.
And they've just opened another business line for the organised crime gangs, because the organised crime gangs are going to go rent a relative. And here's the paperwork.
Ta-da.
Ta-da. And therefore, it's not smashing the gangs, it's enabling the gangs with more ways to make money out of these individuals who, some of them are desperate, some of them are being pushed in deliberately to disrupt us. And that's most of them.
Most are economic migrants. That is the reality.
Most are economic migrants, yeah.
But it's interesting that Macron said earlier this week, 1 in 3 of those who are arriving in Europe want to come to the UK. Well, then, surely it would be in his interests to I've always said this, it's in French interest to try and stop these people leaving on the basis they won't be going to France. France, they make it quite inhospitable for people. But the idea that, A, Macron could stop the boats tomorrow if he wanted to. And B, he as Liz Truss rightly identified, he is foe, not friend. He's been punishing the British people for a democratic vote for the last 9 years. He's a game player, but my worry is he is a better deal maker than Keir Starmer. I was saying on the show yesterday, and it's totally true, genuinely, we'll end up paying Mauritius for this deal.
Yeah, but the other thing, and this is where Macron is right, he says there's too much of a pull factor, because the UK just rolls over and goes, tickle my tummy, yes, you can stay. We need to get deterrents to turn around and mean that when people come in, they don't get put in hotels, they get put in a tent in a field. Yeah. That's the same as they were in
I think
Calais.
It needs to be internment camps. I think we're in internment camp territory. You go into an internment camp, you're in basic rations.
They don't get pocket money. They don't get phones.
You can't go and work as a Deliveroo rider.
Exactly. The charities that are giving them all of this stuff are told to go away.
By the way, those charities aren't funded by public donations. No. They're largely funded by taxpayers' money. Most of these charities, that's the weird thing. We're actually encouraging it. Yeah, or Russian money. Do you know what I find fascinating? Do you remember the Bibi Stockholm? Yeah. Do you remember that massive big fuss about
which wasn't good enough for
how
migrants?
Outrageous it was to put migrants on there. Well, apparently the Royal Navy is set to house sailors on a barge that looks remarkably similar to Bibi Stockholm. I tell you what, I bet the human rights lawyers are all queuing up to make a case to get them off, to get those sailors off, aren't they? Absolutely queuing up.
The Sans Vitesse, which is painted in dazzle colours.
I have to say, the painting like a psychedelic zebra.
Yeah, exactly.
It's quite a look.
Yes, it's interesting, and they're going to put that.
But the same with the army barracks. Yeah. Good enough for our servicemen and women, apparently. Not good enough for some migrant from some basket case country who's here illegally. Yeah. But I tell you the other thing I think is fascinating about this. If this government is saying, no, we're going to return people, are they not accepting de facto that these people are not legitimate asylum seekers? In which case, why have they been afforded the rights of asylum seekers when they aren't?
They're not, and this is where the government, the gangs haven't been smashed. There's nothing being done to try and deal with the numbers that we've got in this country. The growing feeling of resentment is going to cause problems, and the government is just not listening to that.
I have to say, as the years go by and the numbers mount up and the costs mount up and, frankly, the criminality mounts up, I am becoming increasingly militant on this. And I think I speak to a lot of people, card-carrying Labour Party members who would have considered them. You'd definitely, if you met them, you'd go, oh, these people are totally full-on, Starmerites, who are now like, I'm done with this now. Yeah. Put them all on a boat, send them back. I'm done with this. And people, I think people are now increasingly militant about this. And I think Keir Starmer is insane if he thinks that this is going to fly with the British people.
No, he's doing nothing. The 50 as a trial is nothing. He doesn't get it.
But again, also a trial. How long's a trial going to be? No, I need like 1,000 a day being sent.
It'll be as long as Macron wants it to be. And he's just playing with it. He's going, yes, I've had a nice dinner. It's been a good visit. We'll give you a little bit of a sop. There you are.
That's
right.
all it is. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I have a funny feeling you feel strongly about this too. I tell you what, I'd particularly like to hear from you if you think this is a good plan. There must be one of you. You might have tuned in by accident. You were trying to tune into, I don't know, Lib Dem radio. You made the wrong call. I'd love to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Love to hear your thoughts, whatever they are, on this and any of the other topics. Let's also talk about, before we go to a break, again, this is not a surprise. The living on sickness benefits will soon pay £2.5 grand a year more than a minimum wage jobs. So what a surprise that people go, it's not worth going to work. Now, a lot of people, the great and the good, who go, oh, well, I get so much enjoyment from my work and so much status and in whatever I do. Well, actually, a lot of people have really rubbish jobs that aren't fun. They've got a rubbish boss and they're treated badly and they're paid nothing and it's in bad conditions. And they think, now personally, I think our audience would agree, working is good for you and better for you. But there's a lot of people go, but I can go on the sick. And I can have not just the same money or almost the same money without the hassle, but more money. It's a rational decision to make. But this is the Centre for Social Justice, who are a brilliant think tank. Universal credit claimant who's not working and takes the average housing benefit plus personal independence payment for ill health, which again is now huge numbers of people, will receive £25,000 as of next year. But a full-time worker on the national living wage of £12.21 an hour will earn around £22,500 after paying income tax, national insurance. But what's actually in your pocket, in your bank account, £2,500 is a huge sum of money.
So those on minimum wage, who are losing a little bit of tax and their national insurance, are paying for those that are getting more than them by doing nothing.
And crucially, it will be their neighbours. And this is one of the things why I think your Labour, Islington-y, your poshies don't really care about this issue. They don't think it's a problem. They don't know people who do this because they're the same people who don't think that people have kids to get extra benefits.
Exactly.
Because kids to them are an expense.
Yep.
You have to buy a bigger car or you have to moved to a bigger home. No, you just get given a bigger home.
Yes.
You get more benefits. Your kids aren't an expense to you because you don't spend anything on them or make any effort for them. And this is the thing, they don't understand because they don't live next door to these people. But I tell you who does understand. And the support, remember when the two-child benefit cap came in, but also that 26 grand benefit, that's it, that's the max any family, I don't care how many kids you've got, that's the max you're going to get ever. The most support for that was from people who earned under 20 grand a year. Why? Because they live in the same street as those people and they're getting up and they're going to work, often doing the jobs that a lot of people don't want to do on minimum wage, and him next door is sitting there watching daytime telly. Hi.
Until he goes into the shop and then abuses the shop worker on minimum wage, who just happens to be the next door neighbour, and goes out and chucks his litter all over the the which is the other neighbours having to sweep up for minimum wage. And his kids don't go
to school, so the teacher has to do the lesson again, and their kid gets held back. This is a real problem, and it's not just a financial problem, it's a cultural problem, it's a neighbourhood problem, societal problem, it affects education, it affects health, it affects everything. And I get... It annoys me how much this was allowed to grow up since lockdown, when Ian Duncan-Smith, I think he's an absolute hero on this, did so much to get families back to work and just say no. And everyone thought he was, on the left, he's so cruel, but they haven't backtracked on a single one of his policies, which I think is very telling. Just finally, let's talk Jake Berry. He was just on the show with Mike Graham in the last hour. Sir Jake Berry, everyone's got a sodding title these days, haven't they? Thick as thieves, all these knighthood people. He was chairman of the Tory party briefly. He was a Boris Johnson acolyte, a Liz Truss acolyte. He was a presenter on this station for some time. He filled in on my show regularly on a Friday. He's defected to the Reform Party. Lots of accusations of, these are turquoise Tories, having a load of failed Tory MPs. He lost his seat at the last election, turning up for reform. Is he just, frankly, looking for a job? Knows he hasn't got a future with the Tory party on their current polling. Is this just a career move, or is this a genuine move that actually, Tories didn't get it wrong and Nigel Farage is the answer? How much do you trust this defection?
Well, I think we're going to see an awful lot more of it because reform growing in the polls. The one thing reform needs are experienced MPs and people who've got experience in government and everything else. And therefore, looking at 4 years' time when the next general election happens, MPs who know they're not going to get elected if they stay in the Tories move to reform, and they've got a better than average chance of getting elected, and they can then provide some experience into reform.
But some reform voters might, they're getting people from left and right and experience. However, some people might say, but if the people who messed it up last time are put back in charge... Yeah,
but they'll have forgotten about that by then, because look at the mess that the current lot are making, and they'll just it'll all get blamed on them. So it's great. People will say that, but they'll then go, well, they can't be any worse than this current shower, so we'll give them a chance, because that's how.
Which is what they said about the last lot.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in terms of defections. How much do you trust that? And again, I think it's very different, isn't it? If it's a sitting MP with a big majority and says, no, I'm and they've got a history of voting against. It's like Robert Jenrick when he said, he can actually say, look, you can trust me on these issues. I literally left government. I resigned government because I didn't agree with the policy. That's why he argues that he's genuine on some of those issues. How much do you trust defections? As a general rule, doesn't usually work out very well for MPs. Lee Anderson, he did okay, but it usually doesn't work out too well. But